Hey traders, I was able to lock in about $4,500 in my top one futures funded accounts. As you can see here on the screen, almost $900 per account, and I copy traded that across 5. I'm going to share with you the exact trade that I took and the reasoning behind it, the full breakdown of why I took it, how I found the levels, what the strategy behind it was, and why it was such a high probability setup. Patience paid today, I'll tell you that. First things first though, I do trade live. I didn't take this particular trade live on stream, but this red line right here, this little squiggle, is what I shared as I was logging off. I said, I'm looking for this, and if this happens, then I'll take the trade. And that's exactly what happened. That's what this setup was. So just to make the chart a little bit cleaner, I'll delete this red line. But you can go check out the live recording to show that I did share this with my community. And then I do actually have a Discord. The link is in the description below, where I share my setups and my charts and everything, because my team got these levels beforehand also. All right, so zooming out, this, if you narrow down this 15-minute opening range high right here, I actually did not take the 15-minute opening range breakout, and I did not take this rejection. So I'm going to share with you why. These gray shaded areas right here are higher time frame, high volume nodes that I find on the visible range volume profile. So I'm going to zoom out to the 4 hour, and I'll show you how I found those levels. So these gray shaded areas right here, the two that my cursor is on top of, these are the ones that are in that zoomed in region that I just shared with you. And you can see these two high volume nodes right here. There's one and there's two. So that is how I found those two gray shaded areas, and price was kind of chopping around in between those levels. So I'll delete those and kind of zoom into what I was looking at pre-market for my game plan for today. And then also why I stayed so patient and why I feel like this was a really high probability setup that I took. So market open was right here. The market opened bullish. It bounced off of this key level, this really good support area right here, and it came up to these two resistance levels. So my game plan before market open, like this hadn't happened yet, my thought was if it bounces, it reclaims this 200 level and goes higher, then we could potentially have a bullish scenario. And then if it comes up to this 200 level and rejects, we could be looking for shorts. You can see though, it actually came up above that 200 level and it came down and retested. But I didn't take a long like I had kind of thought about or planned on pre-market. The reason was because we still had this resistance overhead, and we were chopping around in this region for a long time. So from 8:50 Central over to 9:35 Central. So almost an hour we were chopping between these two support and resistance zones. So since we were chopping in that area, my thought at this point was we need to break out of this range. We need to get above this resistance if we're going to be taking longs, and we need to get below this support here if we're going to be taking shorts. So that's why this whole time I was sitting for an hour and a half and didn't take a trade until this, because I was looking for a little bit more of a high probability setup and being patient. So once it broke down below this level, I could have immediately entered a short because it broke past this anchored VWAP. New York anchored VWAP is this light blue one. So I could have entered a short right here on the break as it came down below the 15-minute opening range low. The problem with this is I would not have had a clear stop loss. I could have maybe put it up here above this gray shaded area, but that would have been a 50-point stop loss. And who says that it doesn't come all the way back up to these wicks here? So the risk to reward on that was terrible. So what I did was waited for it to show that it was bearish. So at this point, I was definitely thinking shorts, but then I wanted the retest. And there was a high confluence retest here because it was the 15-minute opening range high. I had this higher time frame resistance level and we had New York anchored VWAP, all in this level right here. So that's why that red squiggly line that I showed earlier, that was the region right here that I was watching for a retest to go short. So that's exactly what I did, and entered that short once we got confirmation that sellers were definitely showing up. So I entered here at 143 and rode it all the way down to the initial balance low. So I know there was kind of a detailed breakdown, but hopefully that gives you guys a little bit of information about why I didn't take this 15-minute opening range breakout trade. Although you could have definitely gotten some points off of that. I'll argue that. From here up to where it went, that was about an 83-point trade. For me personally, that was not a good setup because there was resistance overhead and I felt like it was going to reject, which it did. So that was my trade setup for today. One and done, $4,500. Patience paid off today. Have a good one, you guys.